Hello everyone, I'm Teng Wai Lau. Today I'm going to present my paper, Testifying the Model for Classifying the Level of Engagement, a case study of the Historic Centre of Macau. This paper is to testify the model for classifying the level of engagement, which was developed to examine the level of community engagement and give suggestions based on the appraisal. Both the model and this paper are part of the research project of community engagement with heritage in Macau. To briefly introduce the model, it was developed based on the three different spectra of participation, including the International Association for Public Participation, the Sunderland City Council spectrum of participation, and the National Trust spectrum of participation. And the model for classifying the level of engagement has 4 stages. It begins with the lowest engagement level, disengagement, followed by awareness and interest, then engagement, and ultimately partnership. The justification of each level is on the table on the right. In order to testify the model, I used the Historic Centre of Macau as an example. It was included on the UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2005 with the claim of a unique testimony to meeting of aesthetic, cultural, religious, architectural, and technological influences from East and West. The site itself contains 22 buildings and 8 plazas, which can be divided into 4 main categories: Chinese temples, Western churches, residents, and others. The site is not simply heritage in the general perceptions. It bears the traditions of the city as well as innovations from the Far West. It captures the past, bringing it into the present, where it becomes a major part of the social life and cultural inheritance of the community in Macau today. With regard to the official management and presentation of World Heritage Site in Macau, the idea of World Heritage was first introduced to be community in the Macau Policy Address in 2006 by the Macau government, the year after Historic Centre of Macau became a World Heritage Site. Prior to 2005, those historic buildings were not particularly valued, nor were they seen as important remains from the past, and a formal management plan was definitely lacking. The chief executive stressed the Historic Centre of Macau needs to be preserved as a whole rather than by units, while Macau residents should be partially responsible for the preservation of the site and be proud of their heritage. However, legislation related to the World Heritage Site in Macau was not formulated until 2013, after 4 years of consultation. Unfortunately, although the act is now being executed, serious issues arose in the 8 years between the UNESCO listing and the legislation, one of which is that the site was overdeveloped for economic gain due to a failure in consultation and monitoring in those years. This period in which there was no management plan and no legislation resulted in development that was almost entirely aimed at the tourist industry, with almost no attention paid to local engagement. And it was stated in the Macau Policy Address 2013 that the government will continue to renovate streets to create point-to-point heritage visiting for tourists. This reflects not only the interests of the Macau government, especially on the questions of who are the target audience for the Historic Centre of Macau, but it also reflects governmental attitudes toward the ethical concerns of whose heritage this is and what is heritage for. Compared to the work proposed for developing heritage tourism at the site, Macau residents benefit relatively little from it becoming a listed World Heritage Site. It has only been a few initiatives to enhance local engagement with heritage in Macau. There was an official survey on participation of residents in cultural activities. These statistics were collected between 2013 and 2019. The cultural activities include going to the cinema, going to the library, visiting a museum or World Heritage Site in Macau, attending a live performance, and attending an art exhibition. The reference period of this participation is 6 months prior to the date of answering this survey. With a total sample size of 2,100 units, the participation rate of Macau residents in cultural activities started from 57%, then dropped by 0.3% in 2014, and increased to a peak of 59.2% within 3 consecutive years, with a slightly drop from 2017. Among all the cultural activities mentioned above, 25.6% of respondents visit museums or World Heritage Sites in 2013, while 24.8% visit the World Heritage Site, making a ratio of 1 in 2.3 individuals who have visited the World Heritage Site. In 2015, there is a significant reduction in the participation rate of individuals visit the World Heritage Site, although the overall participation rate in cultural activity rises. Sadly, all participation rates dropped again in 2018, and the rate of visiting to World Heritage Site reaches its lowest point at 14.9%. In general, the average visit to the World Heritage Site in Macau per participant is in the average range of 2.1 to 2.4 times per year. Survey respondents gave potential reasons for the overall reduction in the participation rate of visiting the World Heritage Site in Macau. Between 2013 and 2015, the main reason given for not visiting the World Heritage Site is lack of time, while a lack of interest ranked second. In 2016, more participants showed no interest in participating in cultural activity, including visiting the World Heritage Site in Macau, whereas fewer people say they have no time to participate. A new reason is mentioned by the participant in 2016, suggesting that locals think it is unnecessary to revisit. All these reasons are the reflections of locals' attitude toward the governmental performance within the heritage sector in Macau. In particular, the community shows a strongly negative attitude toward participating in cultural activity in the most recent 3 years. Serious attention needs to be paid to improve the level of engagement through regular reviews and adjustments, to retain public awareness within the sector, and to ensure the sustainability of the Historic Centre of Macau. Therefore, I designed a questionnaire to identify the level of engagement with heritage in Macau, testing the effectiveness of the current World Heritage Site Management Plan in engaging the public community by exploring the views and experiences of Macau residents during their visits. As a result, the management issue around engagement will be reviewed from the feedback from residents. The questionnaire asked the respondents to provide demographic information and their experience of learning about or visiting the World Heritage Site in Macau. The data was collected through a Google survey in May to June 2019. There were a total of 17 questions, which could be subdivided into 3 main sections: demographic, perceptions and visiting experience, and personal attitude towards heritage education in Macau. A total of 378 individuals responded to this questionnaire. The question referenced no specific time period. In other words, The results are based on the lifelong experience of respondents. According to this data, more than half of the respondents learned Macau history or heritage-related information at school. Of the 217 respondents who confirmed they were taught about Macau history, 85.7% were taught general background information, while 74.1% claimed they cover some of the architectural aspects as well. Nearly 90% of respondents know what the Historic Centre of Macau is without giving indication. People mostly access information on the World Heritage Site through the internet. Television is the second most common way, while education ranks third. Nearly 3/3 of the respondents visit the site once a year to any one of the 22 buildings, with the top three purposes for visiting being coincidence as part of a visit by family and friends or an event or fair held at the site. Generally, 2/3 of the respondents claim they either enjoy or really enjoy their overall experience. Nearly 70% of the respondents say the information and description at the site are useful or very useful. Answers are selected from 4 choices for this part. The first is never been to, second, less than 5 times, third, between 5 and 10 times, fourth, more than 10 times. The mode of the highest number of visiting times in each building is less than 5 times, which is the result across 18 sites. Among all the buildings of the Historic Centre of Macau, the St. Paul's Ruins is the most frequently visited site in Macau, with 56.4% of respondents having visited that site more than 10 times. The less visited building includes St. Augustine Church, to which 47.1% of respondents have never been, then the Castle Garden and the Old Protestant Cemetery and Fountain Kwai Fun followed. With regard to community engagement at the site, approximately 2/3 of the respondents feel engaged with the site, mainly in terms of history, culture, and architectural style. Moreover, almost a half of the respondents reported they might not visit the site again, mostly due to the fact it was often overcrowded with visitors. To clarify, the term visitor here refers to tourists. On the other hand, respondents who claim that he will definitely revisit report their reasons. The top 4 are the site was the icon of Macau, personal interests, cultural events and fairs held at the site, and lastly for the beauty and landscape. Whereas 3/4 said they did not get involved in any kind of cultural heritage-related events in Macau. In the final part of the questionnaire, respondents were asked to express their attitude toward the introduction of heritage education at school, and how they feel about being the target of heritage promotion in Macau through the Likert scale. More than 70% of the respondents agree or highly recommend that knowledge of cultural heritage should be introduced in school. Some responded negatively by saying it is better not to teach if the information is biased, and if the government does not care about the popularizations of Macau history, including heritage, to students especially. What is the point? The result above suggests that in reference to the model for classifying the level of engagement for performance, Macau residents have a low level of engagement by showing weak awareness and interest toward the World Heritage Site in Macau. This is mainly because the government's interest focused on the development of heritage tourism, whereas the effectiveness of activity for engaging the community is. For example, a large population of respondents reported the purpose of visits are mainly due to coincidence and to family and friends visiting from overseas, which shows that their visits are rarely self-motivated and have no real aim. The inadequate planning and management of the site result in it providing shallow cultural experience, poor management with heritage, and a low level of motivation from the local residents. Respondents are not motivated to visit because they do not know what the experience can offer to them. The trend of losing interest and weakening awareness can also be seen from the Cultural Statistics Survey, which shows that the percentage of people showing no interest in participating in cultural activity increasing by 20% over the 5 years' time. Furthermore, an increasing number of people who believe it is not necessary to revisit is effectively a proclamation of weak awareness and lack of interest. It is arguable that people may have no time to visit, which is claimed of 43.5% of respondents in 2018, rather than a lack of interest. But still, the participation rate at the World Heritage Site visit drops to the lowest level last year, 2008. When an extremely high level of recognition of the heritage site is coupled with only a quarter of respondents participating in heritage-related activity besides a simple visit, this speaks volumes about the attitude and interest of local residents toward the World Heritage Site. As the residents assume that the World Heritage Site is for tourists only, they distance themselves and develop a perception that the heritage site is not for them. For this reason, heritage sites seems less attractive to locals and lead to a situation where Macau residents show weak awareness and interest in heritage sites. As a result, it becomes very unusual for locals to go to the heritage site. Some respondents comment that the current approach of engaging the public with heritage is ineffective and problematic. This is a direct quote from the questionnaire number 81. The promotion to local is not enough and not encouraging. One of the main reasons is that too many tourists will affect the willingness of locals to participate in events and visits. Let's refer to the model. Only fulfilling the actions of giving information shows the level of engagement was at the entry of the level of awareness and interest. To conclude, the decisions of the government is one of the push factors that heavily affect the level of engagement. Also, weak public interest implies the current management plan fails in engaging the community. Respondents remain positive towards learning about cultural heritage despite having a low level of community engagement experience, indicates the willingness of being further engaged. And heritage education will be one of the possible approach for enhancement, and this approach will be discussed in other paper with a review of up-to-date level of engagement after the impact of pandemic. And thank you for listening.